There's an inevitability in some regard working with any sort of dangerous animal.
Snakes have been disappearing in forests around North America, and we just found out why. In recent times, several unusual cases of a decline in snake populations have been reported in many regions, and the culprit has been identified as the work of a terrible fungus known as Ophidiomyces ophiodiicola. But what exactly is this fungus, and why has it raised a huge alarm among eco-scientists around the world? Join us as we attempt to answer the pressing question: where do millions of snakes disappear to? Ophidiomyces. The snakes are battling an epidemic, and it's up to the humans to end it. This disease, known as Ophidiomyces, or snake fungal disease, has taken a firm grip on the population of snakes in certain parts of the world, and there seems to be no end to its menace. Snake fungal disease is caused by the fungus Ophidiomyces ophiodiicola, a keratinophilic fungus which was identified in 2013 by Ziegler, Hambleton, and Pera. The fungus was first isolated from an infected snake in 2009 by scientist Joseph Guaro and his colleagues, and since then, scientists have been working tirelessly to explore its physiology, mode of infection and transmission, as well as how to combat the growing threat it poses to snakes. Ophidiomyces is a fungus often referred to as an emerging pathogen, which means that it has only newly appeared or had been existing silently, and has now experienced a rapid increase in geographical range and incidence. Because of the fact that it has only recently been discovered, scientists face huge challenges in understanding the mode of treatment needed to combat the spread. Although the spread of Ophidiomyces has been isolated to regions of North America and Europe, the number of cases that have been reported is quite alarming, and if left unchecked, might cause a sharp decline in the population of snakes around these regions. But before we delve deep into the intricacies of this disease, mode of transmission, and the critical steps that have been taken towards improving the situation, one major question we should seek to answer first is why scientists should even be concerned about an outbreak that affects snakes in the first place.
Of the 40,000 snakes that I've milked, or the over 100,000 venomous snakes that I've worked with,
why our ecosystem needs snakes. Snakes are definitely one of the most dangerous species of animals on the planet, often perceived as feared or hated by most people. Some species of snakes are apex predators, and they rule the jungles around the world with an iron fist, with very few predators threatening their existence. But one thing that many people may not have considered is the indispensable part these reptiles play in maintaining the balance of nature. For one, snakes play a huge role in maintaining the balance in the food web. In many ecosystems, they can serve as both predator and prey. Environments where prey is in abundance attracts a huge population of snakes. These snakes can then also become prey to other predatory animals like birds, mammals, and even other snakes. Even the highly venomous rattlesnake cannot escape the grips of the king snake, which surprisingly is immune to the venoms of the rattlesnake and will make a meal of it at every encounter. Then there's the king cobra of Southeast Asia, the longest venomous snake in the world, which will feast on other snakes if the need arises. Therefore, the presence of snakes in an ecosystem keeps the predator-to-prey balance, ensuring that the integrity of the food web is maintained in nature's perfect order. Then there's also the fact that snakes also serve as nature's pest control system. As predators, snakes prey on rodents, which does the human population more good than we like to appreciate. Rodents are natural proliferators, and when they find themselves in an environment with little to no predators and abundant food, they begin to reproduce exponentially, taking over the region within a very short period. This is especially very dangerous in areas dominated by humans, because these rodents can be quite invasive and will infiltrate homes, cause untold damage to buildings, while carrying some of the deadliest human diseases. History is filled with cases of rat infestations that have left an indelible mark on the world. This even dates back to prehistoric times, when uncontrolled rodent populations would take over a territory. For example, 6 million years ago, the first rats were said to arrive in the region now known as Australia. Although it isn't clear how many rats arrived on the island from Asia, we know now that it only takes a single pregnant female rat to throw an entire country into a massive infestation. Today, it is estimated that Sydney, Australia alone, is filled with over 500 million rats. This should give you a scale of the population that inhabits the entire continent as it is. These rodents have settled in over the course of millions of years, building a network of breeding grounds that continue to accentuate the infestation. One major epidemic the world will not forget in a hurry is the Black Death of the 1300s. There is rarely any disease outbreak that can rival the Black Death either in the number of cases or the fatality rate. Between 75 to 200 million people were said to have died from the epidemic. To put that into perspective, that's between 30 to 60% of the population of Europe. History will always remember the part played by rats in this unforgettable tragedy. During this medieval period, the regions of Europe were outrun by a massive rodent population, which carried the fleas into the human homes, exposing them to the pathogen that eventually caused such a devastating outbreak the world will never forget. Then there was the Hanoi rat debacle of the 1900s, which resulted from the introduction of a sewer system in the Hanoi colony. Officials had to bring in rat hunters, whose only job was to reduce the rat population through any means necessary. These professionals were eventually so successful that they even brought in as many as 20,000 rat rails on some days. The sewer system gave the rats an open breeding ground where their existence wasn't challenged by any predator, and in such cases, these highly productive animals can rack up their numbers to scary levels. Another notable incident that exemplifies the importance of maintaining a predator-to-prey balance was the Great Mouse Invasion of the 1920s, which took place in Taft, California, and is still regarded as the largest mouse infestation in the history of the United States. Back in 1924, there was an ill-informed attempt to eliminate predators like hawks and coyotes from the county. However, even though the exercise started with a noble intention, things didn't exactly go according to plan. Although the population of the predators was successfully curbed, this resulted in a massive rodent infestation whose impacts still echo in the forgotten pages of history. A series of unrelated events triggered a massive exodus of the rats as they headed straight for the human settlements, scampering across fields and eating everything in their path. The scenes were straight out of a movie. Due to the absence of natural predators, the mice population had risen to a staggering 50 million, literally a massive army of hungry rats ready to feast on anything in their paths. Their hunger was so insatiable that they were said to have eaten a live sheep in its pen. As the situation got more dire, nature began proffering its own solutions, as predatory birds began to arrive in the region, feasting on these rogue rodents, and eventually causing a sharp decline in the population. Some infamous cases of rat infestation has punctuated our history, further affirming the indispensability of natural predators like snakes in curbing the excessive reproduction in the rodent population and the consequences that can follow such an unchecked increase. Another example are the rodents of the eastern United States, which have been proven to be hosts to ticks. This dangerous disease can be easily transmitted to humans, further endangering our population. But with the help of the timber rattlesnakes, which are common inhabitants of the region, these disease-bearing rodents are kept in check, ensuring the safety of our species. With these beneficial effects the snake population has on our continued existence, it is essential that we keep an eye out for any potentially damaging disease that may threaten their habitat and health. Mode of transmission. The first case of snake fungal disease, or SFD, was reported in New Hampshire back in 2006. At the time, the fungus responsible for the outbreak had not been detected, so combating the outbreak was a very difficult challenge. By 2007, the disease had spread so rapidly that the snake population dwindled by 50%, a massive decline that ignited great concern among ecoscientists. In 2008, SFD began to appear in the snake populations of eastern Illinois, especially in the Massasauga rattlesnakes, a species that was on the brink of extinction in the state at the time of the outbreak. What makes the disease so deadly is the ease with which it spreads. Ophidiomyces ophiodiicola, the fungus responsible for the infection, is categorized as an environmental saprobe, which means it feeds primarily on decaying organic matter, so it most likely resides in the soil. Ophidiomyces is highly tolerant and can thrive in a wide range of soil pH, from moderately acidic habitats to the highly basic. The fungi is also very tolerant of drought and can survive in the toughest of conditions while utilizing complex compounds like carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur in its metabolism. When the infection began spreading among snakes in the North American territories, detecting the origin posed a difficult challenge. But by 2020, the fungus had been identified in at least 38 states in the United States. The timber rattlesnake wasn't the only species to fall victim to this ravaging situation. Other species, including the black racers or coluber constrictor, eastern indigos, also known as Drymarchon cooperi, milk snakes, also known as Lampropeltis triangulum, and western rat snakes or Pantheropus obsoletus have suffered from the wrath of this unseen enemy, depleting their populations in high numbers. The disease has been observed in both captive snakes and their counterparts in the wild. Ophidiomyces is spread mainly by contact, either with an infected surface or other infected animals. Snakes are usually found in each other's company, so this plays a huge role in the rapid spread of the disease. Once one snake is infected within a territory, there's a very high chance that the disease will spread through the colony, ravaging the population in an unrelenting onslaught. In regions with a high snake population, the disease can spread very quickly, affecting a very large percentage, and sometimes resulting in high mortality rates among the infected population. Physical signs of infection. Snakes infected with Ophidiomyces display some telltale signs, especially on the skin. Some of these signs may include thickened or ulcerated skins with scabs or crusty scales and abnormal molting. It can progress even further, resulting in the development of subcutaneous nodules or swellings under the skin, face, and head of the snake, dealing an unbearable amount of pain for the snake as it suffers a slow, painful death. Snakes may also experience skin discoloration at the site of the infection, and as the infection develops further, it begins to penetrate the tough outer layer of the skin, creating an inflamed, crusted lesions. If the disease remains untreated, these lesions can alter the snake's survivability and sometimes end in fatality. When a snake gets infected, Ophidiomyces ophiodiicola will initiate, when the outermost layer of the skin of the susceptible host is breached, which permits the entry of the fungus into the epidermis. Mechanical abrasion of this outermost layer facilitates the infection, although these have been confirmed cases of infection in the absence of skin scarification. This natural abrasion or injury compromises the integrity of the outermost layer of the snake's skin, further accentuating the effects of the infection. Once the fungus has breached the epidermis, the host snake naturally mounts an immune response, which includes edema and the recruitment of immune cells to the site of the infection, as the body tries to fight against the deadly invaders. Within just a couple of days, the infected epidermis becomes necrotic and thickened, producing this conspicuous yellow to brown crusts that are usually characteristic of the disease. These crusts may often break off, resulting in the erosion or ulcerification we talked about earlier. The fungus continues its damaging journey through the necrotic skin, proliferating with a remarkable intensity, while the resulting lesions gradually expand in size, squeezing the life out of the snake with each passing day. Some wild snakes often show signs of these lesions in various parts of their bodies, the head or the tail. According to findings, scientists have confirmed that the infection is usually limited to the epidermis, with some exceptional cases resulting in the dermis also getting infected. In some really severe cases, the dermis and subcutis can get heavily infected, and the hyphae can begin to invade the underlying skeletal muscle, dealing irreparable damage to the body of the infected snake. Fungi that make it to the deeper tissues are usually encased within the granulomas, which may present clinically as nodules. There have also been cases where the cornea of the snake has been invaded by the fungus, as well as an infection of the lung and the maxillary bone. However, disseminated infections caused by the fungus are quite uncommon in the wild. This is probably because most of the infected snakes would have succumbed to the grips of the disease before the infection developed to such an advanced state. Another reaction that can be observed in the infected snakes is an increase in molt frequency. During these molts, the necrotic tissue and fungal elements within the old epidermis are cast off, and the new skin begins to appear clinically normal, except for the occasional deformed scales that stand as a testament to the previous infection. If the infection is only limited to the epidermis on the outer layer, the molting process will expel the fungi, clearing the infection, and giving the snake the chance to recover. However, on the occasion that the fungi had infected the new epidermis prior to the molting, the snake may experience a recurrent infection. Therefore, a snake suffering from SFD will usually molt several times in rapid succession, so as to completely get rid of the infection. Sometimes molting does not occur perfectly, and portions of the infected epidermis will adhere to the new skin. This can also lead to a serious reinfection that may not be solved by simply molting. In severe cases, the snake may lose its life to the grips of the disease. But this path is not a one-way road. There are several ways through which this infection can result in a fatality. In some extreme cases, the disseminated infections in the lungs can result in serious tissue damage that's sufficient enough to kill the host. However, there have also been many pieces of evidence supporting the fact that most snakes that get infected by the disease die from the complications of the infection, rather than from direct fungal damage. These infections can affect the snake's vision, its sense of smell, and the infrared sensing, which limits its ability to obtain food. Infected snakes may begin to show signs of weight loss, as they find it practically impossible to feed. As the health of the snake falls into rapid decline, the animal may still be subjected to some other opportunistic infections, taking advantage of the low immunity caused by the infection to deal their own damage on the snake. Although it is very possible for the fungus to directly cause the death of the host, in many cases that result in a fatality, the health of the host would have been compromised prior to the infection, or as a result of the infection. Snakes are especially susceptible to the virus shortly after they emerge from hibernation. This is because the hibernation period predisposes the snakes to infection due to the presence of a large number in small areas, which facilitates a rapid spread of the deadly disease. Although the growth of the fungi is usually decreased at the low temperatures at which most snakes hibernate in the United States, reptile immune function and molting frequency are also reduced at these cooler temperatures, so the fungus is able to penetrate deeper and eat faster into the skin of the infected snake. However, hibernation isn't a prerequisite for the proliferation of the infection, because the infection has been observed in wild snakes from warmer climates, where activity occurs all year round. Scientists are currently working hard to investigate the infection dynamics of the fungi, its temporal patterns, as well as the disease remission and progression in various geographical areas, so as to further understand how to tackle the situation head-on. Some physical changes that can be observed in infected snakes include the appearance of lesions on the skin, which may eventually lead to the death of the animal. Lesions on the head and face can make feeding practically impossible. When a snake gets infected with this fungus, catching a prey gets extremely difficult and painful, and so many of these animals just get weaker and weaker as they slowly starve to death. If the snake starts without food for so long, it becomes weak, and so does the immune system. At this point, the fungal infections can become very severe and ultimately take the life of the snakes. Infected snakes that are instantly killed or succumb to the disease in a matter of days are the luckiest, as they are preserved from the horrors of watching themselves die without being able to do anything about it. Because this infection only affects the skin of the snakes, many people have questioned why the infected snakes can't simply shed the skin and slither away with a healthy skin. But it's not that simple. Sometimes, some snakes can get lucky, and after shedding their skin, they break free from the bonds of the fatal disease. But sometimes after molting, some fungal hyphae can remain on the skin, leading to a reinfection that may probably lead to death. Ophidiomyces is usually limited to the skin of the animal and rarely ventures deeper to invade the internal organs. However, there have been some isolated cases where the fungus had stretched its root deep into the muscles, bones, and even the digestive and respiratory systems of the snakes. But these cases are few and far in between. The clinical signs displayed in snakes with SFD can also vary depending on the stage of the infection and the severity of the disease. On a general note, infected snakes will experience localized scabs on their skins. The snake may also experience some crusty and thickened skin lesions, which can occur on the body, face, or practically any part of the snake. Other common signs that can be observed on the skin of infected snakes include painful blisters, large swelling, cloudy or opaque eyes, and huge lumps under the skin. It is in the most severe cases that disfiguring facial lesions can begin to develop. Some of these snakes can also begin to experience an increase in their molting frequency and subsequently become anorexic. These reactions can further accentuate the infection, increasing the risk of fatality in the affected snakes. Risk to human health. Ophidiomyces. Ophidiicola does not affect humans. The fungal infection has been proven to cause any reactions in humans, which is probably good news for us, both of course, not for the snakes. The disease does not also affect other animals, so the infected snakes do not pose the risk of spreading the infection to other wildlife. Although there has been a noticeable snake population decline in places where this disease has been detected, there is no established consensus about the possibility of causing a serious outbreak that can wipe away populations or affect species that are considered endangered. Clinical diagnosis and treatment. When a snake contracts SFD, a specimen from its skin will need to be tested to confirm that the fungus is indeed responsible for the reactions on the snake's skin. By performing a fungal culture or using a polymerase chain reaction test, the presence of the fungus can be detected. Because SFD is a relatively new disease, scientists have not been lucky enough to crack the code of its cure. No confirmed cure or vaccine has been discovered, but scientists continue to work tirelessly round the clock to find a way around this huge outbreak. Another factor that poses a great challenge for researchers is that it still remains unclear whether Ophidiomyces ophiodiicola is an invading pathogen like Pseudogymnoascus destructans, the fungus responsible for white nose syndrome in bats, or a widespread endemic fungus that would occasionally cause severe disease because of the perfect alignment of a suitable host, favorable environment, and other factors that are not yet known. But to be on the safe side, scientists have continued to treat the fungus as an invasive pathogen and observe all the biosecurity measures necessary. This way, minimum damage would be avoided, and the snake population would be kept safe by the required safety precautions, at least to a reasonable extent. Because we do not yet understand the extent of this threat, it is still practically impossible to fully prevent any further spread of the disease. However, by following the safety precautions, we can be able to help keep the snake population from spreading this disease further and further, which may lead to an uncontrollable outbreak of epic proportions. Although this task may be very arduous, as the study of reptiles is a job best left to the professionals. These snakes can be unpredictable, hard to spot and study, and even harder to treat due to their elusive nature, and the fact that they're pretty dangerous as it stands. Before we go on with the rest of the video, check out our subscribers pick for today. In recent years, there has been a sharp drop in the snake population in some regions. This unusual occurrence prompts the question, where do millions of snakes disappear to? Jungles and forests have reported cases of a mysterious disease ravaging the landscape, leaving snakes with swollen and disfigured faces. With the ability to spread faster than we can keep up, this disease poses a major threat to the ecosystem. Are we looking at a red alert threat level that could leave a significant impact on the snake population of the world? Or do you believe that some snake species will eventually build a natural immunity to this strange disease that has continued to ravage the reptile populations? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. Now let's get back to the video. Implications on conservation efforts. The emergence of this deadly disease in the North American region has raised several concerns and issues about the viability of some endangered snake populations. Could this be the disease that wipes out an entire snake species that has been on the edge of extinction for many years? Are we looking at an outbreak of epic proportions that will cause a drastic reduction in the world's snake population? According to the recent findings and the studies conducted at places where the disease had previously ravaged, these claims may not be too far from the truth. The suspected outbreak of SFD in New Hampshire, which brought the disease worldwide attention, resulted in over 50% decline in the population of timber rattlesnakes within just 1 year. In Illinois, there have been several reported cases of high severity, which caused high levels of mortality within an endangered population of Massasaugas, further pushing the species deeper and deeper into extinction. In 2009, a case of widespread mortality in the water snakes of Lake Erie was linked to Ophidiomyces. Although the population of the snake had been dwindling since 2001, the infection caused an estimated 18% decline in the year following the outbreak, further supporting the argument that the disease is as devastating as advertised. The good news, though, was that the Lake Erie water snake was removed from the threatened species list in 2011, in spite of the ravaging disease that had plagued their populations 2 years earlier. The dark cloud in this story, however, is that there are only about 10,000 members of this species left, and their geographic distribution is pretty limited. So if an SFD outbreak hits again, the Lake Erie water snake may find itself on the precarious edge of extinction. Even though there have been several cases where an outbreak of the disease had resulted in a sharp decline in the snake population, not all snakes succumb to this decline. For example, when the disease hit the snake populations in Minnesota and Virginia, the effects of the fungus were quite mild, and it didn't deliver the kind of devastating result that was observed in the other areas. However, the data on the snake population of any area is relatively unreliable, as the process of conducting a census to determine the exact population of snakes can be quite challenging and even borderline impossible. So reports on snake populations should be taken with this in mind. There are also many factors responsible for how a population would react to an outbreak of SFD, which will depend on the life history of the hosts in question. For example, the timber rattlesnakes of the northeastern USA, which brought the disease to the attention of the world, are known for their low reproduction rate. While chronic diseases like Ophidiomyces usually result in death, it can also affect the fitness of the host and the ability to reproduce. So, the sharp decline in the snake population can be attributed to both the fatality and the indirect impact on the reproductive system of the infected population. The bad news in all of these is the fact that an effective and collective means of eliminating this disease has not been found. Scientists have majorly focused on the highly endangered species, and all hands are always on deck to facilitate early detection of the disease on these endangered snakes, so as to quickly tackle the problem in its early stages, before it takes root in the skin or the internal organs of these animals. However, scientists are working round the clock to further understand how this fungus works and how to combat it on a wider scale. There is still much to be learnt about this emerging disease, and hopefully, one day, a universal cure that will help alleviate the pains of infected snakes will be found. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.